Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everyone. At one point in your life, or maybe the lives of somebody close to you, there's a high probability that you may be involved in some type of accident, where there may be some injury, where it may be at the hands of somebody else's negligence that caused that accident. And at that point, it's time to look at some legal counsel. How do you pick the right attorney for personal injury? Big decision, a lot potentially riding on the line there with your health and compensation and such. We're going to talk about that today, a high-profile case that he is involved with, and break this all down in terms of what's involved on the back ends of working in a potentially negligence case, this time involving transportation. He's the owner of Bekman, Marder, Harper, Malarkey, and Perlin, an amazing firm in Baltimore. And so great to have him back with us. Our Diamond of the Decade, Paul D. Bekman, is on the program. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Steve. Good to see you.
You too. It's been a while since we talked. And what the accident I'm referring to here is one case we're going to take a look at is the barge that crashed into the Baltimore Bridge. And I can't believe it was a year and a half ago, and you're currently dealing with this case. Why don't we go right there? What's the status of this case now?
Well, the incident itself occurred right after midnight, between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning on March 26th, 2024, in the Baltimore Harbor. A vessel known as the Dolly, which was owned by individuals, a company in Singapore, was a gigantic vessel. It was 940 feet long, and it was carrying 4,400 plus containers. And it was leaving the port after midnight, dark as can be. Little did we know that before the vessel had left, it had had multiple incidents of losing power that were documented before they left. They decided to leave, and the vessel had a span that it could pass through at leaving the harbor of the Key Bridge, which was 1,200 feet in length. That was the area that they could get through. So the vessel left, and lo and behold, while they were leaving, what had happened several days before and what had not been taken care of was the fact that it totally lost power, and it was a floating meteor. There was a pilot aboard the vessel, and the pilot had never been told about the problems that had developed the days before. Think about that. You're going aboard a gigantic vessel that could cause unbelievable harm to structures like a bridge or to individuals, and they never told the pilot anything about the prior problems. And I can tell you from what has been happening in this case, which we'll talk about, that the pilot always inquires, as did this pilot, is there any problem that I should know about? Has anything happened? Is there anything dangerous that may have happened? Absolutely nothing was told to that pilot. The vessel left, and it was escorted, as is typical, by a tugboat to assist it in departing. And although the vessel is gigantic and big, when you're on the water and you have a tugboat assisting you, they can be of tremendous help in guiding you through what is this 1,200-foot area. And if you look behind me and you see the bridge in San Francisco, the area we're talking about isn't quite that big, but it's 1,200 feet. Wow. And that is where they were going under. Gigantic vessel.
I mean, we were talking about, of this vessel almost a quarter of a mile long. It's just hard to even fathom that. Now, when you talk about the pilot saying that he wasn't informed, now I'm going to go a little deeper here because this is where I'm always thinking, this side, that side, different perspective, as I'm sure you and your team always do. How do we know he wasn't informed? How was that done typically?
Because nobody contradicted him. No person aboard the vessel, the captain, the chief mate, the bosun, nobody contradicted him and told him that this had ever happened. Had he known, that vessel would never have left the port. It would have stayed there, and the defect which existed would have been remedied, and he was never told. So as the vessel leaves, and it has this tugboat, the captain discharges the tugboat and tells it to go back. We're leaving. This is before they lost power. And then when they lost power, the captain tried to call the tug back, and it was 3 miles away, and it could never get there in time, and it didn't get there in time. What should have happened, if it was reasonable to leave anyway, in light of the prior problem, it should have had at least 2 tugboats, one on each side, that could maneuver the vessel right through this area into open sea. It was never done. And as a result, it regained power at the last 30 seconds and was unable to drop an anchor in time to help it maneuver in the right direction. And the bridge, the key bridge, which has been there since 1977, that's 49 years, never hit before, never had an injury before. This gigantic vessel smashed into the bridge, and the bridge totally collapsed. On the bridge, at the time that this incident occurred, there were workmen who were taking a break. It was after midnight. They were in cars. This is March. It was pretty cool out. Cool meaning cold. And there are 2 people in each car, and boom, the bridge is hit. The bridge collapses. The cars go into the water. And 6 individuals died. They died a horrible, horrible death. They were all either married and or had children, families. They lived here. They were hard workers, and they were gone. There were 2 other members that were able to, one who was able to get out of the vehicle after it went in the water, and one who was able to escape it because of his position on the bridge. The bridge itself was a main thoroughfare in the city of Baltimore and surrounds. And when that bridge collapsed, it blocked the channel. Nobody could get in, nobody could get out. And the port, which is a very, very busy port, was shut down. Shut down for months. You can imagine that, the impact that it had upon the longshoremen and the harbor workers and all the people that would work there and go to work, who could not go to work because of this tragedy, which I will explain as far as we can tell, was clearly the fault of the vessel in failing to do what it needed to do. It should never have left. It should have fixed the defect before it left. It should have been escorted out appropriately when it was fixed. This is a dangerous condition. It's like a floating time bomb that explodes. And that is exactly what happened here. So what happened here, and you say to yourself, well, these people were on the bridge and this ship was on the water and it's on navigable waters. What law applies here? And the law that applies is the maritime law, the law of the sea. Even though it's territorial waters, you can see one shore from the other shore, you can see the bridge. When you are on the water, and I know that there may be people who are listening that are near the water or go to the water, when you are on the water, no matter where you are on navigable waters, the maritime law applies. It's the maritime law of the United States, and it is unique. And in the circumstances such as this, when a tragedy of this mammoth nature occurs, the owners of the vessel have the right to seek what is called exoneration and limitation of liability. And within 5 days after this tragedy occurred, the owners of the vessel filed a petition for exoneration. Exoneration, it's not their fault. And limitation, we didn't know that there was anything wrong. And the maritime law, this is filed in federal court, requires them, that is the owners of the vessel who filed the petition, to have the burden of proof that it was not their fault and that they did not know of any danger. It's a little bit different, when somebody's injured in an automobile accident and they file a lawsuit because of their injuries or, God forbid, a wrongful death. The person filing the claim has the burden of proof. That's typically an injured party. Not here, not in the maritime law. And the maritime law controls. And the maritime law says, owner, operator, you have the burden of proving that you are not at fault and that you didn't know anything about it. It's their burden. So we just look at what the general concepts of maritime law are when a situation like this occurs. There's a doctrine. It's called the Oregon Rule. Been in existence for a very, very long time. And it is law of the sea. If you are a moving vessel and you strike a fixed object like the bridge or a pier or another vessel, you are presumed to be at fault. And so we start off right now with that concept and that law that is binding. This case is filed in federal court. It is filed before the former chief judge of this court, Jim Bradar, and it is a non-jury proceeding. It is currently scheduled, and it may seem like a long time, for trial in June of 2026. So next June, coming around sooner than we all think. And they will have the burden of proving that they were not at fault and they didn't know at fault. So what has been happening since this petition has been filed is that there are lawyers representing a whole series of individuals, the state of Maryland, the city of Baltimore, Baltimore County, the families of the people who died, people who were claiming economic damages because this occurred and business was lost. All of those claims have been filed, and there are lawyers from all over. And I happen to be involved. I represent surviving children of two families, and also Baltimore County, Maryland, which is surrounding this area, and that was involved in the rescue efforts and issues relating to making sure that everything was done appropriately after the incident. And there are lawyers from everywhere that are involved, and very good lawyers who know what they're doing. And we've all worked together. Things have taken place, which unfortunately I'm not allowed to talk about. They're confidential. We're subject to confidentiality. But I can tell you, based upon what I know and having tried many maritime cases, and I've tried many of them, and limitation of liability cases, it is my firm belief that the owners of the vessel will not be entitled to limit their liability. So when you say, what happens? Let's say they win. And what damages would be available to recover. And what the law says, what the maritime law says is you are entitled to recover the value of the vessel after the collision, and the freight value of the freight on board, which has been estimated at approximately $48 million. And that is not enough to even touch the extent of the damages that are involved in this case. This bridge was built in 1977. It has been a landmark in the city and a way of transportation to and from various areas that people use every day. 35,000 vehicles a day cross that bridge. Now, if, on the other hand, we are entitled to show, which I believe we will, that there was clear negligence, that they knew about the negligence, that they didn't do anything about the negligence, that they could have prevented this from happening, then you are entitled to pursue the insurance coverage that exists for the vessel. And lo and behold, for good reasons, there is, hold on to yourself, $4 billion worth of insurance coverage. But you have to prove your case. You have to prove it. But there's a huge difference, as you can tell, with limiting your liability and recovering damages that we believe we are entitled to.
So some quick questions here for even more understanding, and you break it down very clearly, and I appreciate that. That's why you're the diamond of the decade in our world here. Is the insurance company involved in this at this point? I mean, they $4 billion. They get a lot at stake. You know, are their attorneys all? They are
working very, very hard and
around the clock, I would imagine.
And a lot of the insurers are overseas in London. And that's fairly typical in maritime cases. The underwriters tend to be from overseas. There's no personal contact right now. We're dealing with lawyer to lawyer, and it continues to move forward with pace so that we can meet the deadline of having a trial, if necessary, in June of 2026. And I'm thinking about it now. Here we are in September. Okay. Talk about 9 months.
Yeah.
That's not that long ago.
It isn't, especially the magnitude of this case. I want to focus for just a moment on maritime law. Loosely put here, is this shipping company guilty until proven innocent? Loosely put, just fundamentally looking at it, can we, in layman's terms, kind of look at it that way? Because on the reverse of that, innocent until proven guilty, but based on maritime law, they have to prove that they're innocent. It kind of looks that way.
Yeah, because there is a presumption. In other words, it is presumed, because of the Oregon rule and other law, that if you are a moving vessel, which it was, and you strike a fixed object, which they did, you are presumed to be at fault. So they have to overcome that presumption, and that is very difficult to do. And it's interesting also that because of the nature of this whole tragedy, there were a whole number of institutions that became involved in it. The National Transportation Safety Board, the Coast Guard, the FBI. They were all involved initially in the investigation, literally the day after this thing happened. And they went aboard the vessel, they went aboard, they took statements, they did an investigation, all themselves, and all of which information is accessible and will be used, if necessary, at the time of the trial of the case.
Wow.
And again, it's the judge, one judge, it's not a jury, it's a judge who determines the liability issue here. Can you limit your liability? And if the claimants, all of us, prevail and the dolly fails to meet its burden, then you can have a jury trial on damages. And in that trial can be in federal court, where they have the right to go into state court. So that's something that's only going to be decided in June of 26 as limitation of liability and exoneration of liability, and then you move to the damage aspect. So we may be around for a while.
Maritime law, very intriguing. Let's say that a vessel is 10 feet from shore, 5 feet. It's enough water for it to move forward. It's still under maritime law?
That's absolutely true. And, we're not talking about a lake that is totally bounded by land and doesn't connect to what we call navigable waters. That the maritime law would not apply on an inbound lake. That's true. But for people, let's say, near where you are on Long Island, all you have to do is you can go north, you can go south, and you can go east, and you are in water. And that navigable water is governed by the maritime law. And whatever happens on there is maritime law, not New York law, not Connecticut law, which is across the bay. It's maritime law. And maritime law is unique. It's been in existence for hundreds of years. In the United States, there are organizations that deal specifically with maritime law. One of them is known as the Maritime Law of the Maritime Law of the United States, and you can become a member if you're selected to do that. I've been a member in that organization for more years than I want to count, and you become what is called a proctor in admiralty, where you do work related to maritime cases. And there are maritime cases of all different types. Besides personal injury, wrongful death, there's also damage to cargo, payment of wages of seamen who haven't been paid. The Maritime Law Association of the United States is a very fine body of lawyers who know the maritime law. And, depending upon where you live, if you live in Iowa and you live in, New Mexico, you're not going to be seeing a lot of maritime cases at all. But if you go around our United States from the West Coast to the South, to the Texas area, to Florida, up to Maine, you are going to find cases involving the maritime law all over. And it's unique. And there have been a lot of cases decided by the Supreme Court of the United States that involve maritime law.
Amazing. And this is one of your specialties. When it comes to picking a lawyer for any kind of personal injury case, what are some of the things that somebody should consider?
Well, that's a very good question, because picking a lawyer is a very important process if you have something that it particularly is very serious to take on. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
The maritime law is unique. And if you have an event which may occur, let's say you went on a cruise and you live here in New York and you flew down to Florida and you got on board a vessel in Fort Lauderdale or Miami and it went down into the Caribbean. The law that's going to apply is going to be the maritime law. And just as an aside, as I would say, why is it important for you to get a lawyer who would know maritime law? What people may not know is if they are injured aboard a vessel, going to and from, got a defective ladder, you get hit by a door aboard the vessel, there's a slippery surface aboard the vessel, you fall, you fracture your hip. Unbeknownst to very much everyone, unless you deal with this area, is the fact that you received a ticket to board this vessel. And lo and behold, in this ticket, in the fine print, in the small print, is what's called a statute of limitations, which generally is 1 year from the date of the incident. And it also has what's called a forum selection clause, which means you have to go to the district in Florida to try your case, even though you may be living in New Hampshire or Maryland or Georgia or wherever. You have to go to the Southern District of Florida to hear your case. I can't tell you the number of times, because people in where I live call me for advice about maritime cases, and they say, Paul, I have this case about my client who was injured aboard a vessel. She's just finished her treatment. She had a fractured hip. I think there's clear liability. She's now had her surgery. And the first thing I say to him or her is, well, when did this happen? And he says, well, it happened 2 years ago, but I think the statute of limitations hasn't been met yet, and we're ready to file suit. Well, the only insurance company he's going to call is his own, malpractice insurance, because the statute of limitations is passed.
Wow.
So there you go, and there is an example of why, in answer to your long answer to your question, why is it important to pick the right lawyer for your case? And we can even move away from maritime law. And when you stop to think about this, I can't go anywhere, I don't think, in the United States where I don't see billboards or advertisements on expressways for lawyers and law firms. We will fight for you. We will save you. We will do what's necessary. We will get the maximum amount of money because of the damages that you have. How many of those have you seen?
Countless. And even in what you're saying, I'm seeing them in my mind, all those, phraseology related to that.
And just think about that. Has that firm ever tried a case? Have they handled a case that is in the nature of what your potential client's injury is? So here's what I would say as specific advice for people who are seeking out a lawyer. Don't rely, with all due respect, to what you see on television. Because if you see it on a billboard, then you see it on television, well, then it must be good.
As seen on TV. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they can afford to advertise. They must be great. Have they ever been inside a courtroom? Have they ever tried a case? And I can tell you what I have found, having been practicing for as long as I have, that those lawyers get the case and then refer it to me, or refer it to other lawyers who are experienced in trying a case. So there are a number of well-recognized ways to find a first-rate lawyer and identify that person as an expert in that particular field. So what would you look at? For example, there is a national publication called Best Lawyers in America. It's been in existence for over 30 years. You can't apply to get in there. You have to be recognized to get in there. And Best Lawyers has a board which clearly does the investigation to determine if a person is really the best lawyer in this state, in this city, who has one of the many categories that they have. So they have things like personal injury, medical malpractice, product liability, commercial law, mediation, arbitration. All of that is broken down by state and by city. And you can get access to best lawyers. And you will find that there are a lot of lawyers who are very well recognized all over the country, and that recognition goes from year to year. If something happens or if you don't qualify and the results are not good, you get dropped. You're not in it. So there's best lawyers in America.
Now, you mentioned
Another
before,
one.
Paul, just I'm intrigued about how a lawyer would advertise and be out there and have some notoriety, but potentially has not tried a case. How can you find out how many cases that they've tried?
Very good question. So you will, I think, know that there are certain organizations that specifically require for your membership for you to have tried cases in a particular area. For example, probably the premier organization is the American College of Trial Lawyers. It's been in existence for 50 years. It's basically limited to the top 1% of trial lawyers in a particular state. There is a very specific methodology as to how you get into the American College. You cannot apply. Even if somebody may recommend you, it goes to a state board which investigates the person by contacting others who have dealt with that person, judges before whom that person has appeared, results that that person has obtained. So, for example, in Maryland, I was the chair of the state committee for 2 years, and then moved on to what's called the Board of Regents, which is the Board of Governors. And that was a 4-year term. And I had to do a secondary investigation after someone was recommended. And when you're recommended, you don't know that you're recommended. It's all done secretly. And in talking to individuals against whom that person has tried a case, you find out a lot about that person. Is it somebody who has tried 2 or 3 cases? Or is it somebody who is out there trying good cases, whether it's a plaintiff, whether it's a defendant, and they've gotten good results, they're honest, they're hardworking, and they're the kind of person that should be in the college. And I can tell you, having been in the college for 32 years, that the college has not dropped its clearly identified requirements to become a member. And it is an organization, and I say this all the time, it's kind of funny. It's one of the greatest organizations to go to, because when you go to a meeting, nobody's going to be there telling you how great they are, because you know they are. So there's that organization. There's another organization called the American Board of Trial Advocates, ABOTA. In order to be a member of ABOTA, you have to be able to have tried a certain number of cases, and then you get reviewed by a board in the state that is involved, and you become a member. It's another very good organization. I chaired the Maryland chapter for 14 years. That was enough, and now the chair basically is for 2 years for a person. But these 3 organizations, Best Lawyers in America, by category, by individual, male and female, and there are some outstanding women lawyers out there who are members of all of these groups. Best Lawyers of America, American College of Trial Lawyers, American Board of Trial Advocates. Those groups will tell you if they are a trial lawyer. So that's what I call step 1. Step 2, you're going to hire a lawyer, go see the lawyer. Don't talk to him or her over the phone. Meet with the lawyer. Talk to the lawyer. See if this is a person that you feel is the right lawyer for you. Because we all have our own individual idiosyncrasies in terms of picking somebody who's going to be representing us in a serious matter.
It's a relationship. You got to make sure the relationship feels good.
You're absolutely right. And that's key. Just like the doctor. You've got a problem. It's a medical problem. You need to go to the right doctor. You get recommendations and you go to see that doctor. And boy, do we all make our opinions and our decisions after we do that? Yes, we do. And the same thing holds true for lawyers. Now, that's step number 2. Step number 3, as far as I'm concerned, is finding out when you meet with that lawyer, their experience in the particular case that you have. Have you been involved in this kind of a case? Have you tried this kind of a case? Unfortunately, and this is just a fact of life, there are a lot of lawyers who advertise, who are on television, who have never been in a courtroom at all and have never tried a case.
I can't even wrap my head around that, Paul. I can't. But
it's true.
Wow.
It's true. And that's when I end up getting the phone call, or my partners, because we try cases. And why is that important? Why is the fact that you're hiring a lawyer to handle your case that is important? And the reason is that the defense bar, the lawyers who defend cases, and the insurance companies who pay the funds in a settlement know who the lawyers are who are going to settle their case as opposed to try their case. A big, big factor. I've always said this, and I've lectured about this a lot. The lawyers who prepare their case for settlement are guaranteed to go to trial. But the lawyers who prepare their case for trial enhance their chances to settle the case for the right amount. And what's extremely important for lawyers who are out there is, and I say this with true heart, I find that a lot of lawyers are settling their good cases and trying their marginal cases. It should be just the opposite. And that is, you try your good case and you settle your marginal case.
In your experience, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Like,
no.
let's say out of 100 cases, and this is not scientific, it's just kind of curious. In your view, and in your practice, what do you think the percentage would be with cases tried, cases settled? Any way to put a number on that? Again, not scientific.
Yeah, I would say 90% of the cases are settled and 10% of the cases are tried. I think that's a fair number. But what I have found is if you're going to represent your client, you owe the client the obligation to obtain the best possible result for that client. And how do you achieve that? You achieve it by hard work, by perseverance, and by preparation so that you are ready to try that case and win that case. And juries know that. I mean, juries know and can recognize the people that know what they're doing, explain it in a very common sense way, explain why damages are what they are, and why the person should be fairly and reasonably compensated for what happened to them, whatever it may be. Automobile, truck, plane, train, medical malpractice, defective products, everything. This is something that requires somebody who is not afraid to go in and try a case. And what I have found is those are the people that you should go to.
So we talk about picking the right lawyer. What about if somebody's considering getting into the legal field? You know, maybe they're young, they're kind of looking at it, whether in high school, maybe thinking about college at that point. What's your advice to them?
So here's what I would say, and there are a lot of people, and the law schools now have been even more busy than they've ever been before. And when you're in law school, you get a general idea, I think, of what kind of work you want to do. And it may not be trial work. It may be, I want to do tax work. I want to do trust work. I want to do estate work. I want to do business law. And that's great. And my suggestion for those of you who are listening and are thinking about going to law school is when you go to law school, you will find out what area of law you like and what you lean to. And I believe that it's a very good idea that after you have finished your first year in law school, that you get a clerkship. And there are a lot of law firms that come to the law school, like we do, interview people to be summer law clerks. And that's what I did. I started out after my first year of law school, and I worked for a general practice firm for 2 years. And it turned out that the firm that I was working for represented, and it was a general practice firm, the Seafarers International Union and the National Maritime Union. Those were the two unions that supplied seamen for vessels. And as time went by, I was given a lot of authority, and I would meet with people who were claiming that they had an injury as a seaman aboard a vessel, and I would basically work the case up for the lawyers in the office. So when I became a lawyer, and I had been given a lot of authority when I was a law clerk, they said, Paul, we'd like you to try these two cases. We're going to give you these two cases. And we want you to know that they're jury trials. And they were both automobile accident cases. And they said, you're going to have the opportunity to try this yourself, prepare it yourself, and that's the best way to learn. We're not going to tell you what to do. You've had a lot of experience here about getting cases ready for trial and what to do. You try these two cases, and I just want you to know that these two cases are losers. And we're not expecting you to win them, but we want you to get the experience of appearing before a judge, arguing to a jury. At that time, there were 12 members of the jury. Now there's 6. So I took them, and I hadn't been a lawyer for 30 days. And I tried them both. And I won them both. And that was it for me.
Wow.
I was hooked. That is what I wanted to do, and I've been doing it ever since.
I was curious how your fascination and affinity for maritime cases came about. I always wondered about this. Do you?
Now you know.
Or have you ever thought about owning a boat?
Well, as a matter of fact, when I was younger, way back when, I was a Sea Scout. I didn't own a boat, but I went aboard a boat. I learned a lot about boats.
Sure.
I have a son-in-law that has a boat, but
I was just curious. I just just wondered.
I love taking trips on boats.
Sure.
But no, I don't have a boat.
You know what? The best people to know are the ones that have boats. You don't have to worry about it. They got it. And to your point here about somebody just starting out, my friend's daughter, first year of college, this past summer, she was an intern for a law firm. And it was, she was okay doing her thing until about a month ago, they allowed her to sit in the courtroom for the Gilgo Beach now becoming trial. That the whole case where one individual is charged with killing a lot of women and burying them in a beach area of Long Island, and it went on for years. That did it for her. She was thrilled. She got to even just witness that, and it was just said about a day ago that it was approved that revolutionary DNA testing and research can now be used in this case. So that's going to elevate there. But, to your point, you never know what's going to happen, even just as an intern in a law firm, what you might get to experience and what you might, be gravitating toward be at the maritime area.
Very much so. And, there's a place for everybody.
Sure.
And people, there are a lot of people who go and they say, look, I want to go into business. I want to come into New York. I want to be in the city. I want to be a broker. I want to work for a hedge fund. And that's great. And there are a lot of lawyers who do that type of law. It all depends on what you want to do. And my recommendation for that is to follow your heart. Follow what you want to do. And all you have to do is work hard, have perseverance, have preparation, and you will be a success. There's no question about it. The harder you work, the luckier you get. That's the message.
Wow. And the passion. You have to have, I would imagine, the passion.
Yes, true. But you have to be careful about that because you're before a jury a lot of times and everybody's a little bit different. And you've got to appeal to the general aspect of what's happened. It's the fault that is something that carries the case. And the fault will determine what is going to be done in the case. And yes, it's important to like the plaintiffs who bring the case, but sometimes it's the defense who is not the greatest. And sometimes the defense is great, and the doctor is a great witness and is very believable. And that's why you've got to find your niche for what you want to do and how you are going to go about winning the case. And it doesn't take a lot to do that. You just have to put yourself in a position to focus in on the main issue of the case that will permit you to win it. And you will.
In the beginning, did you have those butterflies when you first walked into the courtroom, especially those two cases where they told you, yeah, you don't have to win them, just do them, get it over with, just see, get your feet wet. What did it feel like?
I'll tell you, I've been very fortunate. There are a lot of people that cannot take a step into the courtroom. I just felt very comfortable in doing it. I had even been given a case to handle before the NTSB, and the National Labor Relations Board, before I became a lawyer. They permitted me to do it. And that, I think, helped me know that I could do this. And it's something that you really have to care about, something you really want to do, and you put your heart in it to help your client to do the right thing for your client. And that, to me, is the most rewarding thing to do.
Have you always had this gift, I'm going to call it, to recall facts, details, figures? Because, well, we may not talk for a while, and you'll even recount what we talked about like a year ago. Has it always been in you?
I've been very fortunate in having a pretty good memory, but nobody remembers everything. Sure. Okay. But I do remember we had to talk about this case, which is going on and on and on, and will finally end in June of 2026. But, having a good memory is a big help. doing any kind of work that you do. We all know that. And we all know about, well, if you get up older, you're going to have dementia and you're going to forget all of this. I've been very fortunate. I'm somebody who works out, who takes care of themselves. I work out every day before I go to work, and try to take care of myself and be active and alert. So I'm fortunate.
Yeah, but I don't think all of that helps, but some are just wired that way to just remember the details, the finite little, that the rest of us wouldn't even pay so much attention to. You just retain like a sponge. And I got to believe, decades of this work, you're still absorbing it. You don't even know you're doing it, but you're doing it, Paul. It's amazing.
Well, thank you for that. I find it very important to be upright and honest and direct, and to try to make sure that everybody understands exactly what is being said. Because like when you try a case, there are a lot of different issues in the case. You've got to focus in on what is the issue here that is going to win the case for you, and play it to the end, and have the evidence that supports it with good expert witnesses or testimony from your client. Nobody is more important than what the client says. If the client has a problem, client has an injury and comes across well, and we prep them and we try to prep them for the questions they'll be asked, not only by us, but by the defense. How do you handle this? How do you handle that? Jurors identify with the people who they believe. And if they don't believe them, nothing's going to help. Preparation before trial.
You said it's important to be direct, and I believe you are. But the difference here is you're direct with authenticity, warmth, and sincerity, where others can be just direct and leave it be. But you care, and it shows. Paul, how do we contact you if somebody's got a question, maybe a legal situation they're going through? I just want to pick your brain on something. How do we find you?
Well, the world we live in now, Steve. We live in the Google world. So here's Paul Bekman, Bekman. My firm is Bekman, Harper, Malarkey, Bekman, Marder, Harper, Malarkey, and Perlin. We have 8 lawyers. We're trial lawyers. We all try cases. We're in Baltimore, Maryland, 1829 Reisterstown Road, Baltimore, Maryland, 21208. We try cases all over Maryland. We try cases in Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, or anywhere else that people may require us to be.
Paul, thank you for today. Thank you for the insight on a lot, but also just the background of this case, which had world magnitude when it happened and still will, $4 billion. Good luck with the case, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to see you.
You too. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.